to the church that we're working with, a young church, not even a year old, really ripe for sort of molding. And the pastor has given us responsibility for doing Bible studies and that sort of stuff. So we're going to start teaching them on transformation and identity and stuff like that. But we had a trip planned for Choco. We were going with a group from Bogota, and it got canceled because the Mexican cartel are actually coming down into Choco and, you know, causing some upheaval. And the government didn't want us to go, and particularly thought it was not going to be safe for American citizens. We might get kidnapped or something, I don't know. So we didn't get to make that trip, but we're going to reschedule. In the meantime, we've been praying about Choco, and James has really been inspired to write some declarations, which were really good. And so in prayer, you know, declaring those declarations, and then getting the inspiration and coming to the understanding that actually our role is going to be more legislative rather than boots on the ground type of thing. And I know that it was prophesied over me, but I also had gotten the revelation even before it was prophesied that I was going to be getting in touch with the governor and the local government there, and being sort of like a spiritual advisor to some of them. So we wanted to know, in light of this new addition to our blueprint mandate, if you were still doing legislative groups, and if there was one that maybe we could join or something.
Yeah, still do legislation groups. Just thinking of there's one which is a East time zone group that meets the similar sort of time as this. I think once a month. I can add you to the group if you'd like.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Probably. I'm not really sure. Let me see. Let me check when the next one is. The next meeting. Okay. Wednesday the 24th of October is the next one. Same time as this.
Okay.
Well, I will add you.
Great.
Okay. So, anything you want to particularly talk about? It looks like you're the only ones here. So, I think Mary's got a Spanish exam or something. Or...
Oh, we have ours every day.
We'll greet you and talk to you in Spanish. Just really getting some more revelation about that, and feeling pretty good about that whole idea. But we still will get to Choco to survey the land and meet the people and do the work with the government.
There are a couple of people in the church that we would like to do a venture free with, and the leaders, the one missionary leader as well as a pastor leader. So it seems like in our own minds, it's coming together. Venture free, see how decreeing, declaring will be effective from a position of rest, peace, than boxing on the ground. I know there's things that we will still do, but with a different kind of intent.
Sounds great. Yeah. I mean, it's a process. you have to build a relationship and then begin to unveil things and open things up. But if they're open and their hearts are to pursue what God's doing, then I'm sure you're going to find hungry people who are willing to embrace things. Obviously, the challenge is when it comes to anything that may be a sacred cow that they may not want to slay. That's the problem. And there may be some theological or doctrinal issues that will potentially come up, and you've got to work through them.
Slow.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely taking it slow. Yeah. There's a great distance, difference in age. The missionaries about my age and the pastors, early 30s. He's really open. He is a leader. He likes that place, but he is open to change. And he says, well, whatever you want to do, we feel comfortable with you guys. Just do what the Lord puts in your heart. I know often it starts off that way, but changes as things get rolling down the hill. So we're looking forward to seeing what really develops.
He's really open to team ministry. Yeah. Right now, he has actually, he probably doesn't know, but he has a bench of 7 going right now at the church. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he meets with them, I think, once a week, every Tuesday. And he's really open. He's not too caught up in the old traditional ways. Nobody calls him pastor. He doesn't call himself pastor. They just call him by his name. But he's really, I don't think he's too stuck in tradition at all.
No, not at all. In fact, both he and the founding missionary are both really fond of Bethel and how it operates. They like that twist and like the flavor that we bring and present to this particular community. Now, an interesting point is that they're both Americans. And I think Mexican American and Texas American. Said that way. So they're familiar with Bethel. They've been through some of the training. In fact, all of the training.
No, not almost.
Not just
Great. Well, sounds like you've got a good mandate there to work out, and I'm sure it's going to be a positive experience, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of things that you'll discover and continue to engage with them. Key is just make sure it's relational and keeps on being relational, and you can see where that will take. And then obviously that then sort of will flow out into everything else. And I think that's the key. If you can lay a good foundation and be a part of that foundation, then other people will be built on the same foundation, and that will be something that gets outworked. But yeah, I'm sure it'll be an interesting process.
Yes. They're very warm and friendly and open, and not only encouraging us, but we're also encouraging them and making contributions. I think this future thing.
Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah.
We found other churches, another church as well, that expressed interest in our the vision that we had, but they are a bit more traditional. Just a bit more traditional than what you would expect here in Columbia. But I was surprised that this one, the church we're involved in now, is so open and so embracing to at least what we're doing. They have been to Choco a couple of times and are interested in participating in this outreach with us. And when I expressed, and I did speak to Oxen about the creating and declared from this place, a place of rest. He was really open to that, excited about it.
Great. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So have you got any specific things that you feel might be useful to talk about, or questions you might want to?
Well, one of the things that I keep coming back to, and I know we started talking about this early on, and that's the first love and what that looks like. And I think, I know for myself, we can have an understanding about it, but for the most part, that's all it is an understanding. But to have a heart embracing, it seems to be really different in what that looks like. So I just feel maybe it's probably necessary not only for me, but for others too, to revisit and reacquaint ourselves with first love and what it really looks like, maybe examples of how it works out in our own lives as individuals, and what it means. You know, I for myself, admit dying to yourself. You know, like there are things that I may want or programs I may want to foster or push forward, and just waiting and listening to my fellow person and fellow Lord. So, but have to be reminded. Oh, you know. Then I have these visitations, angelic visitations that instruct me, well, you have to die to yourself. And I'm saying, how does that work? I thought I'm already dead to myself. So I guess there are areas that I'm still dying.
Yeah, I mean, first love. I mean, it's the basic for everything, because God is love. I mean, I think this is the key. If we're going to be an expression of God on the earth, and we're going to demonstrate what God's like to people, then love is the key to that. And it's both being loved and therefore being able to express what we've received to others. I mean, Jesus sort of summed it up in that, you know, love basically was a summing up of everything that had gone before. And then he sort of made the statement, you know, it's by your love for one another that the world will see that you're my disciples. So they had received his love, that he left them peace and he left them joy. And the three of those things go together as a very strong foundation for our lives. And first love encompasses those three things: love, joy, and peace. But love is, first of all, is us experiencing love, you know, and that means experiencing the nature and character and the very essence of God and the fullness of what that love is. It is an emotional thing. If it doesn't touch our emotions, then it, you know, what is it? It's not real if it's not really actually touching us. But it goes way beyond an emotional thing only into the real definition of who God is. You know, so what does love really mean? And what does first love mean? Well, we know the Ephesians were challenged because they left their first love. Mm-hmm. And they got caught up in all sorts of works and doing things and doing good things. But they were challenged because they left their first love. And ultimately, first love comes down to knowing that you're loved irrespective of what you do or don't do. Mm-hmm. That's really also then tied into trust, and trusting God because he's love in a way that then you trust him with your life and everything else. And if we don't know love in that way, then we usually try and earn it. That's why people get so caught up with all the works and busy, because they don't know they're loved unconditionally. First love is unconditional love. It's not based on performance. It's based on the fact that this is who God is, and he made us to be loved. He made us for relationship. You know, he made us to be incorporated into that relationship that he has with Father, Son, and Spirit together. That is a love relationship. You know, and without really coming into the place where we can be embraced and engage Father, Son, and Spirit individually and corporately, then love is a concept, not an experience. And so many people talk about love and they share about love and preach sermons on love, but when it boils down to it, do they really know that they're loved? And why do they think they're loved? You know, and there's so much that is based in religion is based in works to earn God's love and favor and blessing, rather than realizing that he gives it because we're all his children. And that really, I think, is the essence of the difference between what we would call, the love that God is. And in Greek, obviously, that's sort of described as agape and all these different sort of things of filial, but he's actually the fullness of love in every sense. There is brotherly love because Jesus is our brother. There is fatherly or parental love because he's our father and mother. So it encompasses every sort of dynamic that essentially expresses a desire for the other person above a desire for self. That's the key when it comes to it. So how am I going to demonstrate the love of God to the world if I haven't received it? Well, I can't. And when I have received it, how am I going to demonstrate it to the world? In the same way that I've received it, freely, without conditions. And it says, even when we were enemies, God loved us. So it isn't to do with whether we love him or not, or whether other people love us or not, to whether we demonstrate something of love to them. So it changes the whole concept of relationship and the dynamic of relationship, because God actually couldn't be love if he was single, because their love, it has to be expressed. That's why God is relational in Father, Son, and Spirit. By definition, he couldn't be a single entity and be love, because there would be nothing to have a relationship with, which is why, God as love is sort of it has to be a relational thing. And therefore, when God loves us, it must be a relational thing also, because it's an invitation to participate in him and be with him. And so be in the relationship of Father, Son, and Spirit, and be part of that relationship and live as a son within that relationship, so that everything in terms of love is then relationally expressed, not performance-wise and anything else. So a lot of religion requires a element of, if you do this, then you will get this. And so, if you repent, you will be forgiven. That's a classic one within the religious system. Well, total mistranslation of the word metanoia, and a total misunderstanding of the fact that God has already forgiven us and doesn't require to do anything to receive that other than agree with it. That's our confession. I'm forgiven. Not, well, I'm sorry for what I've done, now you can forgive me. That is not what confession means. Now, that's been the Catholic view of confession. If you own up and admit you were wrong, then you can be forgiven. Where actually the concept is, no, we're already forgiven, and our acknowledgement of that by our confession, I'm forgiven, actually means we benefit in it. And all these things are very different from the nature of conditional relationships, which is most of the relationships which we normally face. They're conditional on us being acceptable, our behavior, whether we'll fit into someone else's view. All that's conditional. And in a sense, you never really know whether someone really loves you until the situation arises when they need to demonstrate that, perhaps because things are not as good as they could be. Then you know whether someone loves you unconditionally, and a lot of the time it isn't. I remember sort of asking people some questions in like marriage things, saying, okay, why do you love your wife, or why do you love your husband? And most of the time they said, oh, because they do this for me and they do that and they're this and they're that. And it was all on performance. And it's like, well, why did God so love the world? Can we say we did anything to deserve that love or earn it or do anything for God's love? No. So God loved the world because he's love, and love gives. Love is otherly. It's always externally presented to someone else, not on the basis of what they've done. So really getting a grips to that and having experience of that changes how we perceive God and how we perceive other people. So when, I went through this relationship type thing, when I first started to engage sort of first love as a principle, God just hugged me. Father, Son, and Spirit just took turns in hugging me for months. Didn't say anything, but I learned more about who they were from those hugs than I did from a whole load of books on theology or any of other experiences, because it was silent, but it was a heart to heart receiving love, because I couldn't do anything to earn it. And that's why they hugged me and wouldn't let me do anything, because they were trying to get over the point is that love is not based in performance or works. So I just got hugged and hugged and hugged for months on end, but I learned to discern the presence of the Holy Spirit, the Father, the Son, in a way that I'd never done before. And literally what they were doing is wrapping themselves around me and covering me in love and surrounding me in love and loving me. And now, I can say that I live loved. My basic foundation for life is that I lived loved. So I know that I'm loved. I live in that love. I know nothing can change that love. And of course, I want to reciprocate that love. My desire is to love. So first love is not just about God loving me, but me being able to express my love to him. And again, how do I express my love to him? By surrender. So when you tie it to, well, how do I die to self? That's the issue. If God loves me, if I'm going to express love to God, then it isn't because he loves me. That would be, well, I'm giving him something back because he's earned it. That's not really what it is. That's the way our soul responds to love. Well, I've received this, therefore I can reciprocate, I can love. But actually, I am created as the way I am to be able to love. And therefore, when I went through this process of dealing with the surrender of soul and dark cloud and all those type of experience, it brought me to the point of, do I love God because he's done something for me? Or can it be possible that I can love God just because he's God, not because he does anything? So I had to go through that. And do I trust God to be God? And the two are linked. Love and trust are quite strongly linked together. I got to the point where I knew God loved me, irrespective if I never ever did anything else in my whole life. I knew that his love wouldn't change, because he can't change. So if my behavior affects his love, then my behavior has got the power to change him, which it very clearly doesn't, because he's unchangeable. So I got to that point, which was awesome, to just know that God's love was totally unconditional, because it's his character and nature. But then if he never did another thing for me, would I still love him? Was my love unconditional? Or was it based on what he could do for me? And therefore, if he wasn't going to provide for me, if he wasn't going to do anything, would I still love him? And when I got to the point where I felt I could say yes, then I knew things changed, and I knew my soul was no longer needing to be loved in the way in which it was before, or needing to find identity from being accepted by God in that type of relationship. Now, that was a very challenging time, and I had to go through the process of my soul really dealing with the things that I expected God to do, because hey, God's God, he promises stuff, so he's made lots of promises to us on the basis that he's our dad and he wants to bless us. And so I had to seriously deal with, would I still love him if none of those promises came true? And that's a question which was really not easy to answer. And I couldn't have answered it in the affirmative until it's like he took away all of the things which were the promises that he made. So all my dreams, my expectations, each one of them died. And when they died, I grieved over them. Like, this is never going to happen. Not like, oh, well, I know this is going to happen, I'm going through the motions. It felt like that was never going to happen. So every dream, every expectation of the promises of God were almost, well, they died. And I grieved, and my grieving process eventually brought me to the point of, now there's nothing left and everything is gone. Do I still love God? And I got to that point where I could honestly say yes. So then everything really did change, and then I started to look at people in a way that I could never look at them before. Because if God loved me that way and I now love him, then how can I not love other people the same way? And how does God love those people who don't yet know him or don't know his love and all that? How does he still? Yes, he still loves them. They don't know it, but he still loves them. So when I look at people, my perspective in seeing them is seen through the lens of God's love. And therefore, I want to demonstrate that love to them in a real way. So my whole way that I treated people or saw people changed from them being excluded from something to seeing that they were already included in something, they just didn't know it. And that changed everything, really, in terms of how you present things to people, how you share the good news to them. It's not really very good news that you're separated from God and can't know him, until you do this or this or this. The good news is he's not separated from you. He already is at work in you, and he just wants you to know him in that way. That changes the whole nature of love, because God so loved the world that he gave, So what is the response to that? Is there anything that makes that happen? No, because it's already happened. He's already loves the world. He already loves everyone in it. And while we were aliens or enemies in our own minds towards him, he sent Jesus to affirm that love and enable us to experience that love in a practical way. So what happens now is when people encounter that love itself is manifested through faith. It's like we're given the ability to realize what he's already done, and it's usually when we encounter him that creates that realization, because other than that is we have to try and believe it for it to be true. And is it only true when we believe it? Is it only true when we've experienced it? Or actually, is it true and we can actually then realize that truth and experience it? And then, of course, we believe it because we've experienced it. And we've turned everything around somewhat to, if you do this and this and this, then you will know the love of God. And we've sort of presented people with, you do this and you do this, then God will love you. And the reality is, no, he already loves you. And if you encounter him, you'll experience that love, and then you won't have to struggle to try and believe it on the basis of someone telling you about it. We've turned our sharing the gospel with people to a intellectual presentation of truth, which people can't know until they experience, but we expect them to believe it without experiencing it. And that's how we presented the gospel. If you believe this, then you can experience it. Well, the reality is we experience it and then we believe it. That's how everything works. The disciples didn't experience Jesus being the Son of God until he met them and demonstrated to them that he was the Son of God and the express image of God himself. They weren't asked to believe it without having experienced it. But we've turned that into that, because we've turned the experience into something that happens after, rather than before. Well, no one in the Bible had an experience after. It was all an experience, which was the experience that then created the relationship. Or, God didn't sort of do nothing. Abraham decided to go and leave his country and walk, and then he experienced God. God spoke to him. Moses didn't decide, well, I'm going to go to Egypt. He encountered the burning bush, and that totally changed his whole life. But we've created, I think, a way of sharing the truth, or what we think is the truth, in a way which presents it the other way around. You're expected to believe by faith because someone told you this is true. And, well, if you'll only experience this is true after you've believed it's true. Well, that's not how it's presented in the Bible, and it wasn't anyone's experience in the Bible either. But we've made it that way. Now, God will engage people when they engage him, but he's already at work trying to unveil and reveal himself. It's the blindness of people's minds which veils them from the truth that God already loves them. And religion doesn't do anything to help them deal with that truth. It basically tells them that they have to do something to earn God's love, like repent or confess or believe or have faith. It's like we're saved by grace through faith, and that's not our own. It's a gift that he's given us. So everything's changed to, well, have blind faith and just accept it, and then something will happen to you. Rather than, hey, just meet this amazing, loving God, and the engagement with God will just be realizing to you the truth that already exists, that God loves you and wants you to have a relationship with him, because he's already got a relationship with us. We just don't know it. We're already reconciled from his perspective. We just have to become reconciled from ours, which is just a realization that he's reconciled us, not if I pray this prayer, then he will reconcile me. That's what we turned it into. And therefore, the whole first love experience is, if I know that I'm loved, then life takes on a whole different expression, because I can live, in a way which is different. If I know the love of God than if I don't. So people who don't know their love, they're always seeking love, because love is a foundational thing that God has placed within us, which is the primary need that we have. And you could take all the physical needs and everything else. People can be fed and they can be watered and they can have all their things, but without love, they're always going to feel something missing. And that's why you get people who've lived with people all their lives, and one partner dies and they die because they're dying of a broken heart. Literally. I mean, it's nothing physical wrong with them, but actually emotional things with love is so deep that it can even cause people to just give up, because now they're not having that relationship that they had before. And we were created for love. Obviously primarily from God, but also within relationship, as within family, we're created for love. And once I know that I'm loved, then life can be lived with a different perspective. I can love living. So many people go around and they're going through the motions of duty. It's like life is a drudgery and a difficulty rather than a joy, because people don't know they're loved. And therefore life is not something they love living. And eventually, if we can see that and start living life like that, then we will be able to live in a loving way towards others. I can't see how we can't live that way if we're coming from the place where we're loved. But we've got to get to that place. And that's obviously a deepening relationship, not a one-off experience. Even though the love of God has been shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Spirit, it still has to be outworked in reality. And so many people have got so many blockages to receiving that love that they carry on trying earning it, even though God has given it them for free. So many people just can't believe something can come for free, because that's not how the world works. You don't get anything for free. What is the thing? There is no free lunch. Is the American quote, I think. You know, yeah. Someone wants something for you if they're taking you out for a free lunch. They've got an ulterior motive. Well, God hasn't got an ulterior motive. His only motive is that he loves us and he wants us to fully experience that love. And having embraced it, it will begin to shape the reality of who we are. So first love is such a key. We don't have to die to self because we have already been crucified with Christ, but we do need to surrender because we do have a choice. When you surrender the choice, then you can embrace the relationship. And that's the key to dealing with the soul, because the soul has got most of its needs met from the outside in, and now God wants to meet the needs from the inside out. And people aren't used to that. So many people still are looking in the wrong direction. People are looking for God somewhere out there when God is already in there. When you actually turn and look in the right direction, then you'll discover that love flows from the inside out, from God who is already operating within us, rather than us trying to get it from anybody else from the outside in. So yeah, I think first love is one of the key elements to really knowing God. Is to know his love, and to really be a son of God is to be an expression of that love to others. Which is not always easy, obviously. It's not always easy when people don't respond in a very loving way to us, even though we may be trying to demonstrate love to them and they can't receive it or don't receive it, or maybe have their own issues that are in place. But we've got to, part of the thing is not then taking things personally. That's what works when we don't take things personally and we can see it for what it is, a lack of love, generally. Then, hey, love is going to be the solution to every of those problems. Not getting angry, or not any of the other responses we can have when people rub us up the wrong way. We've got to demonstrate love. And love is a choice. It's not just an emotion, it's a choice. Am I going to choose to act in a loving way to this person who's not acting in a loving way to me? Am I going to choose to forgive them and release them and bless them, even when they don't deserve it, when they've not said sorry? How many people won't forgive people because they haven't said sorry? Jesus didn't wait for us to say sorry before he forgave us. He even forgave people on the cross. Father, forgive them. That's what true forgiveness is, because it's based in love. Because what does love do? Keep no record of wrongs. That is one of the really key things to know about God, is that he keeps no record of wrongs. Therefore, we don't need to be afraid of him, because perfect love casts out fear. And when you don't know love, there's an element of fear always. And fear is what drives works to perform, to earn. But perfect love casts out fear. And that really is the element where we really know, and I think really know the love of God when we're not afraid anymore. Yeah.
Demonstrate.
Yeah.
I said, so the best way to demonstrate or to show someone the love of God is to model it, to demonstrate it, to walk in it.
Yeah. Well, I think it is to look to see that I love you, not because you do something for me.
Yeah.
And if you do something bad to me, it doesn't stop me loving you. And that, obviously, it's not easy to do that, because our soul can get in the way of that, which is why we've got to surrender every day to, hey, I don't want to operate in my own choices, inspired by the memory of my past. I want to flow out of my relationship with him, and therefore he empowers me to love. He empowers me to forgive. You know, it's the empowerment of being loved that enables us to love, you know, other people, you know. But it isn't really tested until there's a situation that needs it. You know, it's all about, oh yeah, I love everybody. Everybody, yeah, I love everybody. And then someone does something that you don't like, and then we'll see whether you love them or not. Because how are we going to respond? You know, with forgiveness, the very first thing we need to do as the first demonstration of love is to forgive. Because that's what Jesus did for us. While we were enemies, God forgave us. You know, and we're only enemies from our own perspective. We were never ever enemies from his anyway, but from ours, we felt like enemies. Therefore, what happens? Well, he forgave us. He made it so that we weren't his enemies.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how we first respond to other people. You know, I want the best for you. Yeah, if this is a true relationship and I'm truly going to reflect from God, I don't want a relationship with you because it can benefit me or you might be useful. I mean, I've gone through all those type of things. People want a relationship with you because you could be useful to them. And particularly if you're in a position of authority, they suck up to you and want a relationship to you because they know that you have the power to do something for them. That's not obviously real relationship. You know, someone said that to my wife once. She had been ministering to this lady for quite a while. And this lady had a breakthrough in terms of realizing that she needed other people's love and stuff, and she was looking for stuff from people, you know. And she said to my wife on the phone, you know, the only reason I really wanted a relationship with you because, you know, you're the leader's wife, you know, because I know she was trying to be real, but my wife was like, oh great, that's really good then.
Yeah.
But the reality is that's true. You know, a lot of people want a relationship based on what they think they can get. And if people are like that, how do we treat them back? Does that annoy us? Does that wind us up? Are we going to choose to forgive them irrespective? And I think genuine love chooses forgiveness as its first expression, particularly when you need to express it to people. I mean, when there's no issues, there's no real problem, is it? But when the issues arise or when something happens, that's when when this is now, is this real love? Do I really love that person? Am I willing to forgive them when they've not said sorry, when they're not even acknowledging that they were wrong? You know, am I going to do that? Well, that's really what God has done to us. You know, and that's sort of, I think, the first step of genuinely expressing love. And then it moves on into wanting the best for that person. And sometimes that means speaking the truth in such a way that challenges that person because they're walking in something less than who they are. So pointing that out is love. Love is not sort of mamby-pamby, sort of skirt around the edges, not being real honest and truthful. Love is being truthful. You know, sometimes people don't like that expression of love when you're truthful and pointing out their blind self areas, you know, because they're never going to grow or mature into their destiny if they have all these blind self areas. You know, I mean, I was, you know, there's a few people on Facebook that I relate to sometimes, and one of them is a really odd character, like really odd character. And, you know, he struggles, I think, how to relate to people. But he posts lots of stuff on Facebook. And the other day, for another guy who I'm sort of connected to, he really, I mean, it was so funny because it was like, he said, look, I think you need a real lesson from God in how to have interpersonal relationships and how to respond to people. This guy was like, well, yeah, that's why I've got a wife. You know, she tones me down. Sort of like, but he was being honest, you know, and I really appreciated that because so many people are not honest, and he didn't do it out of any malice. I think he did it genuinely because that person was struggling to be heard or to get his point over because of the way in which he was making it, which was usually quite confrontational and quite aggressive, or quite arrogantly. And this guy said, actually, look, that isn't gonna, you're not gonna make any friends with people if that's your approach.
Right.
And the message that you carry, which may be a good message, won't be received from people if you present it in this way. And he did take it, and he sort of, which was good, but very few people say things like that in truth. And the reality is, sometimes we don't see the things in ourselves others can see. And if other people are not willing to be actually loving in sharing what they see in a loving way, then people continue with all those blind self areas because no one's ever been willing to point them out. And that's what true relationship is. I know when God points things out in my life, he loves me. That's why he's doing it. So when you know that love, you allow him to bring the change and transformation necessary. When God tells me all these things about my life, which are not too good, it doesn't change the fact of I know he's doing it because he loves me. Therefore, I can embrace it because I know he loves me. If you don't know he loves you and he tries to sort of challenge some areas, people feel guilty, ashamed, condemned if they don't know love, which is why love is the foundation for transformation. You never really embrace transformation fully if you don't know that you're loved and God is loving you in doing it. God disciplines those he loves. Not punishes, but disciplines, disciples, corrects, trains, equips those he loves, which means there are some areas in our life that need some correction.
Yes.
Right.
Now, therefore, when God begins to correct me, I know he loves me. I know he's doing it because he loves me. He doesn't want me to be in any way, shape, or form missing anything from who I am and what my inheritance is as a son of God. And therefore, his mission is to help me be changed and transformed into the image that he had for me from the beginning. And that's a love process. It may not feel very nice going through it, because that's what it says in Hebrews, isn't it? Disciplining while you're going through seems to be quite difficult. But afterwards, here's the peaceable fruit of righteousness that's expressed, because it produces fruit.
Yes.
So yeah, I love the whole issue of discovering the nature of God is love, and it's what the world really needs to see and experience. And Christianity and every other religion really don't really express it very well at all, which is why Jesus never came to start a religion. Religion is always man-made and will always be based in laws.
Yes.
Jesus came to establish relationship and help people to continue relationship with one another and with the world.
I had read A Course in Miracles some years ago. And John 3:16, where it says, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, was reinterpreted to say, God so loved the world that he gave it to his only begotten son, which really made an impact on me and my thinking.
Yeah.
And probably a lot of other persons thinking too, if they read it. When you say God so loved the world that he gave his son, I believe that's why so many people have the idea that God killed Jesus because he gave his son for the world. But when you turn around and say he gave the world to his son, that actually shows a different kind of thought on love. He loved us so much that he gave us to Jesus.
Which he did. That's what he said. He'll draw all men to him. The Father will draw all men to him. It's the reality.
Yes.
And I think just the way in which the whole good news gospel message has been presented has turned it into something which is not good news, and most people don't want. And that is the saddest thing, that the love of God has been twisted into this. Well, how can you trust that God? Because he'll kill his own son You know, you can never trust him, because if he'll kill his own son, what's he going to do to you?
Right.
You know? And the reality is, obviously, God didn't kill Jesus. Man did. Man was who required a sacrifice, not God. God gave, or Jesus came and offered himself to actually appease man's need, not God's. You know, to deal with man's issue and to take our death, really. You know, death was the issue, and he died our death so that we didn't need to die. Yeah, and actually, no one really killed him, because he gave up his life. You know, he would have stayed on the cross forever, never dying, unless he gave up his life. They only put him into the position in which he then chose to give up his spirit. He gave up his life. No one took it from him. You know, he gave it. And I think that's the issue. He gave it freely as an offering, so that we don't need to die. You know, and that changes, again, the perspective of there was no punishment involved there. You know, there was no penal substitution where God took our penalty, other than, well, death. You know, death was the issue. You know, not punishment or nothing else, just death. And of course he substituted us in that death, but it wasn't a punishment. You know, nowhere in the statement in Genesis did God say, well, if you do this, I'm going to punish you with death. He just said death is going to be the consequence if you walk away from life. If you walk away from me, the source of life, and follow your own source of life, you're going to die. You can't have life without me in that way. Really, that's really what he was saying. You know, it was don't walk away from relationship, because something will die if you walk away from this relationship. Not, I'm going to punish you. And I think that's very clearly illustrated when God was walking in the garden with the Spirit and says, well, Adam, where are you? Not what have you done? You know, the focus wasn't on the behavior. The focus was on the relationship. Right. Where are you? I want to spend time with you. Oh, well, we're hiding in the bushes, covering up because we're now naked. You know, and actually, did God say for them to cover up? Did God say for them to hide from him? Was he hiding from them? Absolutely not. They chose to walk away from him, and then they chose to try and form a whole system that made up for what they'd done or tried to, and it didn't work. You know, God didn't require Cain and Abel to bring offerings to them. He didn't. Where does it say that? You know, God didn't require it. Man required it because man wanted to salve his guilty conscience. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all down to. The guilt, shame, and condemnation that someone feels. God doesn't make anyone feel that way. Yeah, so man feels that he has to appease an angry God because that's what religion has created. You know, you need to give an offering to this God, then you will have fertility, or then you will have good crops, or then you will have this, and then you will have that. And Christianity has become nothing different. That's right. You know, read your Bible and pray every day, and then God will bless you. You know, do this, do that, do the other, pay your tithes, pay your offerings. It's all conditional on stuff. You know? Whereas none of it's conditional on anything. It's totally unconditional. Now, to experience it, obviously you need relationship. You know, and that's the sad thing. You know, God has reconciled everyone to himself so that that relationship is possible. You know, but they don't realize it. You know, and we need to share the message of the wonderful love of God in such a way that people really will realize it.
Yes.
You know, and the only way is having a testimony of it ourselves. You know, sharing something which is not true for us carries very little authority. You know? So it's for us to experience that and have a true testimony of it, and then the world can actually really see that in operation. And it isn't a true testimony for us if it's not how we express it to others. You know, you can't say I love somebody if you don't forgive them. You can't say I love someone if you don't want the best for them, if you don't want to bless them. You know, God loved Adam and Eve, and he blessed them, empowered them, wanted them to succeed and to prosper and to be fruitful and to multiply. And he wants everyone to do that. You know? There we go.
So some of the encounters I've had with the Lord was about love. It was love for me and my lack of understanding what true love is. I remember during the prosperity movement, I had this encounter with the Lord, and we were embraced and walking along. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and he says, "You know something?" And I says, "What?" And he says, he reached into his pocket and he pulled it out. He says, "You just want what's here." And we continued to love one another, but I felt like I had less.
Absolutely, yeah. It sometimes can feel like that. Yeah, I mean, when I used to pray, you know, in an old way, it was always, you know, God, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Now, a lot of it was directed towards other people, not just myself. But bottom line is, I still wanted him to do stuff. You know, very little of it was, hey, it's great that we can just hang out and have this amazing time with one another. Because prayer was like, well, you're going to need to ask for stuff. You know, that was what prayer was. That was what we were taught, you know.
Yeah.
And the reality was, you know, God is there. Actually, do you just want this relationship because of all this stuff I can do? Or actually, do you want me? You know? So, yeah, that's there's a very famous sketch that people do on a little play that people do in church, like the offering basket, you know, and the offering basket is passed around, and eventually it gets to the guy, and it's like, you know, he puts in his offering, and it's like God is like looking at him, and he sort of feels, is that not enough? You know, and it's just, well, oh, okay, I'll put a bit more in. No, not enough. And then it's sort of like, well, what do you want? You know, and it was like, okay, well, what about the keys to your car? What about the keys to your home? You know, then it's like, oh, what about that second home that you've got? You know, and actually, the reality is actually get in the basket, because that's what I want. You know, get in the basket. I want you, not all this stuff. I want you. You think I want your stuff, and all I want is you. And it was like, get in the basket. It was sort of a thing. It was a very funny little sketch, but it made a point, you know, that God is not looking for our stuff. He's looking for us. He wants relationship, you know. There we go.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right.
You know, I think we live in this, the world that we live in is a world in its absence of love in terms of our connection with one another as people. So we have to be reminded periodically that what this is all about. Are we loving? And how does that look? What does that look like today for me interacting with my neighbor? What's it look like?
No, it's got to be real, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's just a theory.
Sure.
And the reality is outworked in practice with people. You know, it's always going to be worked out with people. You know, it'd be very easy if there wasn't any people involved. Church would be a really great place if there wasn't people involved in it. You know, I mean, it's just me and God, it'd be great. But the reality is that is not the real world. We have been created to have family, to have relationship, to be in that relationship with one another, in spite of the differences. You know, and the diversity of it just makes it the reality of it. We don't have to be just like us. You know, love is encompassing of everybody, not just the people who are like us. You know, because it's easy to get on with people that are like you. What about people who aren't like you? That's the thing. That's when we got to see, is this genuine? Or am I conditioned to just the people that fit into, you know, my gang? You know, and unfortunately, we then try and then conform them to the behavioral norms that is acceptable to everybody, and try and change people to fit in, to be acceptable, rather than just loving them and allowing God to change them. You know, we've tried to change people so that they fit in and are more acceptable. And the reality is God already loves them and we need to love them. And that's the most greatest motivation for change is to know you're loved and accepted the way you are. Then you can embrace the change because you know it's not to perform to earn something, but because he loves, and he loves us too much to allow us to remain the same because we're missing so much of who we really are, and he wants to change us so we can embrace and receive that fullness of our inheritance in him. Okie dokie. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I've got to